Here are a few tips about how to use a spreadsheet as a calculator. So my first problem is the volume of a cylinder. Formula is pi times the radius squared times the height. And you can see in the picture there, I have a radius of 3 feet and a height of 7 feet. Usually before I hit a spreadsheet to do something, I write down what I need to do. So let's see, I need pi, I need to multiply by, and the radius is 3. Sometimes you have to put what you're plugging in parentheses. It depends on the problem. And then raise that to the second power, and then times the height. Now on a computer, to multiply, we use the asterisk key. So this would be pi asterisk 3. For a power, it's the caret, or that little hat key, which is shift 6, and then the 2, and then times the height of 7. Oops, I meant that to be a 7 up there. Okay, so you have to, it's a good idea to write down what you're going to do before you do it. So under my spreadsheet, I can just put that in there. Nice thing about spreadsheet, you can put notes about what you're doing. So I could write in my spreadsheet, if I click on the right box, volume, cylinder, and I could just, right underneath type. On a spreadsheet, you have to do equals first to make a calculation. Otherwise, it doesn't do the calculation. If I start typing pi, it says, oh, you want pi the number? And I can just click to select it in Google Sheets. In Excel, you'd have to double click. And it says you got to close the parentheses, and you don't need anything in there. So I close, and then I can multiply by 3 raised to the power 2, and then multiply by 7. And so the computer does the calculation for me, and I could choose to show more or less decimals. So maybe I only want 1 decimal, or maybe I want more decimals. So I have control over that up here. If you wanted to get fancier about this volume, you could throw in that the radius. So I could type radius equals as a note, and then over here I would just type the number 3 because my radius is 3, and then note to myself that the height equals, and then I could put a 7 there. And then as far as the volume, I could type V equals for that, and then start typing my equation in the next cell. So equals pi, close the parentheses, times. Now I don't have to type the 3 this time because it's on the screen. I just click on it, and the computer just grabs whatever is in cell B5, which is the cell I'm in for that 3 right there. Raise that to the second power, times, and then I click where the 7 lives because it's already on the screen, right? So you have a couple of different options. If the numbers aren't on the screen, you just type them in. Okay, so I had to type the 3 and I had to type the 7. If the numbers are already on the screen, then you just click where they're located to use them. Cool thing about that version is if then someone says, no, the radius wasn't 3, it was 4. And I update that 4, it redoes the calculation for me down here because I was referring to the box the number lived in, and it just grabs whatever's in that box. So if I set it back to 3, enter, it recalculates. Okay, let's try another problem. Let's get a little more complicated one. Yeah, let's do this one. So blood alcohol equation, there are numerous ways to estimate blood alcohol with an equation besides actually measuring someone's a blood sample. And this one says take negative 15 thousandths times the time, and then add this crazy fraction that has 2.84 times n, the number of drinks in the numerator, divided by the denominator, which is weight times gender. And there's a gender calculation right there. And so I could put this into my spreadsheet. First, I think I'm just going to focus on the fraction here. And so suppose that we have a 150-pound male that has 3 beers. So for their fraction, they would have in the numerator 2.84 times 3. In the denominator, it would be 150 times their gender factor, which would be the 0.68. Now, you can't do fraction bars like this on a spreadsheet. Instead, you have to use the slash on the keyboard for divide, which means your numerator has to be in parentheses and your denominator has to be in parentheses. So the spreadsheet version of this would be equals parentheses 2.84 asterisk 3, close parentheses, divide, start the denominator, 150 asterisk 0.68. So try in the spreadsheet and start a new sheet in the same file. Maybe I could call it BAC by double clicking where it said sheet 2 below. So I'm just going to type what the formula looked like. It was B equals negative 0.015 times something called T plus, I have to use parentheses here to get it right, 2.84. Now I'm not actually doing a calculation, I'm just making a note to myself because I started off with the letter B. This is going to be it's like writing, hi, I'm Gary. Divided by 150, in general it's weight times that gender factor. Okay, so I want to calculate that fraction there. So I might make a note to myself, the fraction equals, and then to do the calculation, it's equals parentheses 2.84. Since those other numbers aren't on the screen, I actually have to type them in. Close the numerator, slash to divide, denominator, weight was 150 times gender 0.68. And I think I typed that correctly. So it looks like the fractional part is, in this case, 0.0835, blah, blah, blah. So suppose now I got that fraction. I want to then maybe make a bunch of different calculations, like the time is in hours after the first drink. So I might want to do time, let's call it hours versus BAC. And we could do like 0 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Let's see what's happening to this person over that time. The simplest way to do this is not the best spreadsheet practice, but it's the simplest way to explain it. I would just type equals for a calculation, negative 0.015 times, now T is the time located next to me here, so I just click on that cell. And then I want to add, and in this case, I'm not going to click on that number up there. I probably should, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to type in 0.0835. Let's go with 4 decimal places worth. Yeah, that'll be all right. Okay. Clicking on the number above makes things a bit more complicated, and I'll show that in a sec. Once I type the equation, it's set to go because it only references the number on the left, which I want to change as I copy it down. So I use the autofill button to make that happen. So again, I type my formula, click back on it, point to the autofill button in the bottom right, drag down, and then what happens then is it automatically knows to grab the number to the right instead of that original 0. If I wanted to use this version of the number up there, that's a bit trickier. So I could go equals negative 0.015 times the time, which is located way over there in the same row, plus this number right here. Now, this is the tricky part. When I copy this formula down, it's going to change that A5 to an A6, and then an A7, then an A8. Now, it's also going to want to do the same thing to the B2. As I copy this formula down, it's going to want to go from B2 to B3 to B4. That's a problem because that number is always located in that position. So to tell the computer not to mess with it when you move the formula around, you use a $sign. So I always want to look in B2. I'm only copying down. I don't want it to mess with the row number. I don't want the B2 to be changed to a B3. So I put a $sign in front of the 2. If you were copying this left or right, you'd always want to look in column B, not column C. So you would put a $sign in front of the B. And that tells the computer as it's reading this, says, oh, don't touch the B or don't touch the 2. Since the A and the 5 have no $signs, if I copy this down, it'll change the 5 to a 6 and then a 7 and so on. If I were to copy it right, it would change the A to a B and then a C and so on. That's the idea of relative versus absolute cell referencing. Now that I've fixed the formula, I can fill it down and I will get similar answers to the ones over here if I only showed 4 decimal places. So if I knock that down to 4 decimal places, then the numbers are exactly the same as over there. Okay, so using numbers that change is easy. Using numbers that are always in the same place is a little trickier. You have that extra step where you have to decide where to put dollar signs. All right, spreadsheet, calculator, very powerful. That's it. Have a good day.